Imagine the President of the United States has an idea. It's a bold vision, something that could change the course of the nation. But there's a problem. The legislative process is slow and cumbersome, often bogged down by endless debates and partisan gridlock. He wants to make a big change quickly. Time is of the essence, and waiting for Congress to act could take months, if not years. He doesn't want to wait for Congress to debate and vote. The stakes are high, and the urgency is palpable. What can he do in such a situation? He can issue an executive order. This powerful tool allows the president to bypass the legislative process and implement policy changes directly. An executive order is like a powerful instruction manual. It provides detailed directives on how the executive branch should operate and what actions should be taken. It tells government agencies what to do. These agencies are then responsible for carrying out the president's directives, ensuring that the executive order is implemented effectively. These orders can cover many topics, from immigration to the environment. They can address pressing issues, set new policies, or change existing regulations. They have the force of law, even though they don't come from Congress. This means that while they are not passed through the traditional legislative process, they are still legally binding. Executive orders are not new. Every president uses them. From George Washington to the present day, executive orders have been a key tool in the presidential arsenal. But President Trump used them frequently, right from the beginning of his presidency. His approach was marked by a high volume of executive orders, each aiming to fulfill his campaign promises swiftly. His orders sparked debate and controversy across the country. Some praised his decisive action, while others criticized what they saw as an overreach of executive power. Let's dive into some of the most significant executive orders issued by President Trump and understand their impact on America. From immigration bans to environmental deregulations, these orders have left a lasting mark on the nation. One of President Trump's first actions was a travel ban. This executive order restricted travel from several Muslim-majority countries. The stated goal was to prevent terrorism and protect national security. This order caused confusion and chaos at airports. People with valid visas were detained. Protests erupted across the country. Critics called it a Muslim ban and argued that it discriminated based on religion. The ban faced numerous legal challenges. Courts blocked parts of it. The Trump administration revised the order several times. The Supreme Court eventually upheld a version of the ban, but the controversy continued. The travel ban set the tone for Trump's presidency. It showed his willingness to use executive orders to make swift and significant changes, even on divisive issues. President Trump campaigned on a promise building a wall along the US-Mexico border. He argued it was necessary to stop illegal immigration, drug trafficking and crime. He signed an executive order to begin construction, a key part of his immigration policy. Funding the wall proved challenging. Congress, which controls spending, did not initially approve the billions of dollars Trump wanted. He declared a national emergency to access funds without congressional approval, a move that sparked controversy and legal battles. The wall became a powerful symbol. For supporters, it represented security and control. For opponents, it symbolized division and xenophobia. The wall's effectiveness in achieving its stated goals remains debated. Section 4. Deregulation unleashing American business. President Trump believed that excessive regulations were hindering American businesses. He often spoke about the need to cut through the red tape that he felt was strangling innovation and entrepreneurship. His administration took a firm stance on reducing what they saw as unnecessary and burdensome regulations that were imposed by previous administrations. He argued for a light-touch approach from the government. This meant fewer rules and more freedom for businesses to operate as they saw fit. Trump and his team believed that by stepping back, the government would allow the private sector to flourish, leading to job creation and economic growth. He signed numerous executive orders aimed at reducing regulations across various industries. These orders were designed to eliminate what he called job-killing regulations, and to promote a more business-friendly environment. The administration's goal was to make it easier for companies to start, grow, and succeed without being bogged down by excessive government oversight. One target was environmental regulations. The Trump administration believed that many of these rules were overly restrictive and hindered economic progress. They argued that it was possible to protect the environment while also promoting business growth. The Trump administration rolled back rules on air and water pollution, arguing they were burdensome and stifled economic growth. They believed that by loosening these regulations, businesses would have more flexibility to innovate and expand, ultimately benefiting the economy. This move pleased businesses but alarmed environmental groups who feared the consequences for public health and the environment. Critics argued that the rollbacks could lead to increased pollution and long-term damage to natural resources, which would ultimately harm communities and ecosystems. Another target was the financial industry. The administration believed that the regulations put in place after the 2008 financial crisis were too restrictive and hindered economic growth. They aimed to create a more favorable environment for banks and financial institutions to operate. The Trump administration loosened regulations put in place after the 2008 financial crisis. They believed that by reducing these regulations, they could encourage more lending and investment, which would stimulate economic growth and create jobs. The goal was to encourage lending and investment. By making it easier for banks to lend money, the administration hoped to spur economic activity and support businesses of all sizes. They believed that a more dynamic financial sector would lead to a stronger overall economy. Critics worried that this deregulation could lead to another financial meltdown. They argued that the regulations put in place after the 2008 crisis were necessary to prevent a similar event from happening again. By loosening these rules, they feared that the financial system would become more vulnerable to risky behavior and instability. The impact of Trump's deregulation agenda remains a subject of debate. Supporters argue that it has led to economic growth and job creation, while critics warn of potential long-term consequences. The true effects of these policies may not be fully understood for years to come. Supporters point to economic growth as evidence of success. They argue that the deregulation efforts have made it easier for businesses to operate and thrive, leading to increased investment and job creation. They believe that a more business-friendly environment is essential for a strong and prosperous economy. Critics argue that the long-term consequences for the environment, consumer protection, and financial stability are yet to be fully understood. They worry that the short-term gains may come at the expense of future generations, and that the rollback of regulations could lead to significant problems down the line. The debate over the impact of Trump's deregulation agenda is likely to continue for many years. Section 5. Energy independence drilling and pipelines. President Trump made energy independence a central goal. He wanted America to be self-sufficient in oil and gas production. He signed executive orders to promote drilling on public lands and offshore, reversing Obama-era policies. One controversial order revived the Keystone XL pipeline project. This pipeline, designed to transport oil from Canada to the U.S., had been blocked by the Obama administration. Trump argued it would create jobs and boost energy security. Environmentalists opposed the pipeline, fearing oil spills and increased reliance on fossil fuels. Trump's energy policies pleased the oil and gas industry but angered environmental groups. They argued that his focus on fossil fuels undermined efforts to combat climate change and transition to clean energy sources. Section 6. The Paris Agreement, Climate Change Debate. In 2015, the United States, under President Obama, joined the Paris Agreement, a global effort to combat climate change. This landmark accord brought together nearly 200 countries, all committed to reducing their greenhouse gas emissions and limiting global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. The agreement was seen as a significant step forward in the global fight against climate change, with nations pledging to take concrete actions to mitigate their environmental impact. However, in 2017, President Trump, who had expressed skepticism about climate change, announced his intention to withdraw the U.S. from the agreement. He argued that the Paris Agreement was detrimental to the American economy and unfairly targeted U.S. businesses. Trump believed that the accord imposed stringent regulations that would hinder economic growth and lead to job losses, particularly in industries like coal and manufacturing. Trump argued that the agreement was unfair to American businesses and would cost jobs. He emphasized the need to prioritize American workers and industries, suggesting that the Paris Agreement placed an undue burden on the U.S. while allowing other countries to continue polluting. This perspective resonated with many of his supporters, who were concerned about the economic impact of environmental regulations. He believed that other countries, like China and India, were not doing their part. Trump contended that these nations which are among the world's largest polluters, were not held to the same standards as the United States. He argued that the Paris Agreement allowed them to continue increasing their emissions, while the US was expected to make significant cuts, creating an uneven playing field. His decision drew criticism from world leaders, scientists, and environmental advocates. Many argued that withdrawing from the Paris Agreement would undermine global efforts to combat climate change and damage the U.S.'s reputation as a leader in environmental policy. Critics also pointed out that climate change poses a significant threat to the planet, and collective action is essential to address this global challenge. The withdrawal process for the Paris Agreement took time. Under the terms of the agreement, the earliest the U.S. could officially exit was November 4, 2020, one day after the presidential election. This timeline meant that the decision to withdraw became a significant issue in the 2020 election, with candidates offering starkly different visions for the country's climate policy. The U.S. officially exited the agreement in 2019. This move was met with widespread condemnation from the international community, with many countries reaffirming their commitment to the Paris Agreement and pledging to continue their efforts to combat climate change, regardless of the U.S. participation. However, the Biden administration rejoined the agreement in 2021, reversing Trump's decision. President Biden emphasized the importance of re-engaging with the international community on climate issues and taking bold action to address the climate crisis. His administration set ambitious targets for reducing greenhouse gas emissions and investing in clean energy technologies. The Paris Agreement saga highlighted Trump's approach to climate change. His administration's policies were characterized by a focus on economic growth and deregulation, often at the expense of environmental protections. This approach sparked intense debate about the balance between economic development and environmental sustainability. He prioritized American economic interests, even if it meant stepping back from international agreements and disregarding concerns about the environment. This stance was a significant departure from previous administrations and underscored the deep divisions in American politics over how to address the pressing issue of climate change.